went for about 10 minutes, and TikTok took me down. As you can see in my profile, there's a link tree for the best experience. I would utilize that. Um, that's all I can say. Otherwise, they won't push this out if I say anything more than that about it. But that's the story here. So for best experience, go to the link tree. That is for my TikTok viewers, not for my viewers over here on my other platform. So let's just jump in here. Looks like I'm excellent in studio. Let's check the old Facebook machine. Looks like I'm doing pretty good over there too. Look at me. I am what they like to call a multi-streamer. Yay for me. I just want to talk about the issues. I don't want to talk about personality. I am Brian for Liberty. This is the Brian for Liberty podcast, for better or for worse. I am going to be engaging in an experiment later today. I'm going to try and bring, later in this pod, I'm going to bring one of my dear friends, one of the first libertarians I met way back in the day, on in guest mode through OBS. So for those of you who are watching me on my phone, follow the link tree. But I'm going to try and bring a guest on here for best experience. Follow the link tree. You'll see him on YouTube. Talk some stories, talk some news, so on and so forth. And we'll go from there. But I just wanted to touch real quick on, I talked to somebody about the Tim Walz selection. And I was surprised, honestly, a little surprised at the Tim Walz pick for Kamala. All right, so we think back to 2020, you think about what happened in Minneapolis. So you think about defund the police and all ACAB and all those kinds of things. And I heard an interesting perspective on her choice of Walz over Shapiro, with Shapiro being probably the better choice and the smarter choice, when you consider that she needs to win Pennsylvania. And the interesting perspective of her, and this was from, surprisingly, it's from Jennings on CNN. This was surprising from the perspective of the source that's came from. So this came from CNN, and I thought it was a pretty interesting thing. So Tim Walz, think back to 2020, not really standing up to what was going on in Minneapolis, a beautiful city that I've spent a lot of time in. I'm from that area. That city burning, the violence, everything that took place up there, and Tim Walz as governor not really standing up to that is an example of him kowtowing kind of to that part of his constituency, that farther left, more radical part of his constituency. And then you look at Kamala with everything that's going on in between Israel and Palestine and the protests, and not choosing probably the better candidate, probably the candidate that would vet out better throughout the country. Would be a lot harder, I think, for Republicans to criticize him. Would probably deliver her a key swing state, but he is Jewish. And there is a far to the left part of that party that probably isn't going to like that. And what this reporter on CNN, I'm going to give a CNN reporter credit for this, said was, this is two examples on the ticket of both the vice president nominee and Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, who have kowtowed a little bit to that far left part of the Democrat Party. I'm not criticizing. I don't want to get into I don't even care about the far left or the far right. I don't care about either of those. I just thought that was an interesting point. And I'm wondering, and I would think the Trump campaign is going to pick up on that and say, hey, we should attack from this. Because I don't think just like most of the country isn't far to the right, most of the country doesn't want to ban abortion. Most of the country, I don't think most of the country supports GAC for minors, but I also don't think most Americans care that much. I don't think it's a hot button issue for most. That's a far right. Those are far right issues. I don't think you get a lot of support running to the far right, and I think you turn off moderates. I think the same thing happens for Democrats. I think if you run to the far left and you cater to the farther There's a reason they call it far, the far left and the far right. It's not a large group of people. It doesn't represent moderate thinkers. It doesn't represent independence. It represents, ideologues at the far end of the political spectrum. So I think that it's a very interesting, just kind of an interesting view that you have actual. I think there's a case to be made that the Harris-Walz administration is not going to stand up to, or maybe will cede ground a little bit to the more extreme parts of their own party. That's not to say that Trump doesn't do the same for the, but I don't think so. Here's the thing with Trump. I think you may have some very extreme. You may have some very extreme talking points. Yeah, you might have tweets. You might have things that he says that are. I think that the media kind of ratchets up the extremity on some of his things. But I think for the most part, if you look at, the thing about Trump is we have a 4-year presidency to look at, right? So take all the rhetoric, all the words, and set that all aside. He really governed like a moderate Democrat. Why do I say that? He increased spending. Yeah, okay, he cut taxes, but he really just leveled out taxes. The federal revenue didn't really shrink as a result of the Trump tax cuts, no matter what the media is going to tell you. All you have to do is look at, and go right to the IRS website. We're collecting more overall in taxes by a pretty wide margin every year since since those tax cuts went into place. So he didn't reduce the size and scope of government. He didn't reduce federal revenues. He didn't reduce the size of the military. He was not a friendly Second Amendment president. Take the guns, do due process later, bump stock ban, so on and so forth. So he wasn't a particularly friendly president to the Second Amendment. Already when we went over the spending, massive spending programs, CARES Act, but even before the pandemic, he was spending money like a drunken sailor, running up massive deficits. He governed like a moderate Democrat. He did criminal justice reform with the First Step Act. He did historical funding for the historical black colleges and universities. Ramped up their funding, which, as a libertarian at the federal level, I don't think the federal government should be involved in this stuff. So that's not a small government conservative thing to do. He, had, like I said, the First Step Act with criminal justice reform, opportunity zones, which is, again, the federal government getting involved in economic affairs at the local level, which I don't care for. So he did a lot, realistically speaking, he did a lot of things that if you just look at a policy perspective, tell me what extreme policies he's had. He didn't have any extreme policies, and he was very moderate. And quite frankly, the programs look a little liberal. So I always say that the worship of Donald Trump from the right is almost as silly as the fear of him from the left. Now, the big argument of that is going to, of course, be the whole Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court. Yes, we have a conservative court. Yes, that Roe versus Wade got overturned, and that was an absolute landmine for Republicans at the midterm. Is what prevented a red wave in the midterms. But I think the border is going to, and here it's a funny thing. I'm going to get into this with the border in a minute, but with the border, I think that is the Democrats. That is going to be, the border is to Democrats as abortion is to the Republicans, I think. I think that's going to hurt Democrats. I guess what I don't understand is where this sudden support for Kamala Harris is coming from. I don't understand. Oops. I have not been live on Facebook this whole time. I do not understand I don't understand the Democrat love for her all of a sudden. I don't understand where this love for Kamala Harris is coming from all of a sudden. I don't get it. I don't get the polling numbers. I think that I got Diddy in here saying it's all artificial support on TikTok. I don't understand where it's coming from. I just look at the numbers from 4 years ago and I go, she wasn't just an unknown in 2019. By the way, she didn't make it to 2020. She dropped out in December of 2019. She didn't even make it into 2020. I don't get, she wasn't just an unknown then. She was wildly unpopular in 2016, just wildly unpopular. So I don't get the sudden surge in the polls and all this excitement around her now. It doesn't make sense to me that all of a sudden we view Kamala Harris as this great option. I just don't. I don't get where it's coming from. Confused. Let me just say I'm confused by it. Let's just leave it there. I don't understand it. And you know what's interesting to me, I guess another thing, if you want to get conspiratorial, and look, I started talking about this last night, and TikTok took me down, which is why I'm doing this on multiple platforms. Go to the link tree, get a better experience. That's where the mic is and everything else. But so the other platforms in the link tree, you'll be able to hear me better. When I bring up stories, you'll be able to see them, so on and so forth. Anyway, I brought this up last night. President Biden got more votes than any president in the history of the United States. They touted his incredible results he got in 2020, and he was failing so badly that they had to take him out and replace him. And a Democrat, the person they replaced him with, was so wildly unpopular, not just an unknown, but wildly unpopular, wildly disliked by Democrats. And they're trying to rewrite that wasn't the case. In 2020, she 844 votes in the primaries. She dropped out of the race. 844 votes. Explain it to make it. I guess what are the kids saying? Is make it make sense. Is that the bit, right? That's what we're talking about here. Make that make sense to me. Clarify how that is possible. And I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. So I get somebody coming up here saying Kamala was hardly disliked. She was wildly disliked. They didn't like her. She got, when Tulsi Gabbard entered her career, she was this was the BLM era. This was the criminal justice reform, George Floyd era. That's where, and she was a prosecutor in California. She got roasted. She was just getting raked over the coals, laughing about smoking pot while locking people up, extending prison sentences. This stuff was all talked about a ton going into in the primary. She was just disliked. It's not like she wasn't an unknown. She was disliked. And say she wasn't as appealing as the other options at the time. Why is she more appealing than the other options now? Something's going on with my feed on one of the channels here. That's weird. Oh, goodness gracious. I tell you, technology can eat it, all of it. All right, so we're going to got to kill some stuff out here. Anyway, no, she wasn't just an unknown. She wasn't just she was disliked by Democrats then in that era. With her history, she was just not liked. And that's just all there is to it. Anything else is an attempt to rewrite history. Just say we didn't know her as well. Whatever excuse you want to use for not liking Kamala at the time, and tell me why she changed. But don't come back and try and tell me that we liked her then. She just wasn't as popular as the other kid. No, she was wildly disliked. I'm going to get kicked off of my other platforms. Let's see here. Both fight each other over who. I'm getting serious issues here with my. Man, I tell you what. The technology, man. It really is just the technology that's killing me over here. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the stream, according to my messages here. Super frustrating. I don't understand why my speed is so bad. I upgraded my internet service. I upgraded my stinking computer just so I could multi-stream, and it's still not working the way I want it to work. I really need to get somebody in here who's like an expert in this stuff and can solve these problems for me. So I'm going to kill some stuff on the thing here. See if that helps me free up some bandwidth. I just don't understand it. But anyway, so we'll see if I get kicked off the other stuff. But that's my problem with Kamala. That's the issue. I just don't understand how we can make this argument that it just doesn't make sense. So, and then, so forget her popularity. Okay, fine. She's more popular than I think she is. I don't know what I'm talking about. Fine. I'm wrong. Okay, great. Perfect. Fine. Super. Congratulations. She's the most popular person ever. Why? Why is she so popular? What are the policy positions? She's Joe Biden's vice president. Joe Biden was wildly unpopular going in. He was so unpopular that they had to replace him on the ticket. Okay, so there's a couple options as to why they replaced Joe Biden on the ticket, right? One of those options is that they were lying about what was going on with him, and he's actually incapable, fundamentally incapable of running again. That's one option. That's an option they will tell you is a big old conspiracy theory, right? Something is going on here. I might have to reset this whole bit. I might just switch this over to the phone and go off of the other platforms. Nobody's over there anyway. I'm coming for you, people. Bear with me for just a second while I swap this up. If I can get that to do the thing that I need it to do there like this, and then do the thing there like that. Could be because I'm on